Right now in China, there's a culture war, or maybe more like a cultural tug of war, playing out between the United States and China's Communist Party.
Even though you're in China right here, you're feeling this New York City feeling. I'm not from Brooklyn, but I'm still representing this stuff. I listen to Brooklyn music.
And this tug of war is over the minds of Chinese millennials.
Do you think of American democracy, along with all this culture, as a good thing?
Yeah, I think it's a good thing. At least it brings some new opinion, new point of view to Chinese people. Yeah, I think it's good.
我们是社会主义国家，从建国这69近70年来，这个老百姓对中国共产党领下的走这个社会主义道路，总体上是肯定是满意的。
There is definitely a concern about culture, foreigners teaching the wrong sorts of values to their students in China.
Democracy means equality.
Bloggers have been snatched up and rehabilitated for disrespecting the national anthem. Meanwhile, the government is airing hip Marxism video programs. And at the same time, Chinese youth are using MacBooks with VPNs to skirt the Great Firewall just to watch episodes of House of Cards.
Right here, Chinese lifestyle is changing.
We're just across from Tiananmen Square, where in 1989, scores of students and civilians were killed here by the Chinese military during pro-democracy demonstrations. So this seems like a pretty fitting place then to talk about a massive shift that's going on in China right now. So, studies in recent years have found that well over half of Chinese college students now say they identify with some sort of liberalism. And Chinese millennials more broadly, about 60% of them say that they have a favorable view of the US. That's twice as many as those over 50.
And experts say that this influx of Western culture plays a huge role in shaping people's views.
Definitely, New York is the most important scene for me. The Velvet Underground is definitely the most important influence. The indie scene in Beijing is growing very fast, and I don't think government paid that much attention for us. I think in some way we have even more freedom to do whatever we want.
Rock and roll artists were censored in China for years, but now rock and even hip hop are huge.
Maybe I can button these up. Cool. The U.S. has such a major cultural influence that even if you want to be anti-American, you do so by quoting Kerouac and rapping. I'm prejudiced because I'm part of it, but I think that 100 years from now, when we talk about 21st century culture, the Beijing music explosion may very well end up being the first important explosion that occurred globally in the 21st century.
And that is, well, that is wild. If you think about it, just 2 decades ago, you have China, which is rural with no middle class, and 20 years later, just 20 years, you have a hip, urban China, and you have young adults skateboarding and drinking artisanal coffees.
For young Chinese, there really wasn't much of a cultural background to draw upon. When you consider that sort of China emerged out of this period of the Cultural Revolution, in which much of Chinese culture was basically destroyed.
Between 1966 and 1976, as many as 2 million people were killed during Mao Zedong's Cultural Revolution. Think of it like a violent communist clampdown on bourgeois China. During it, much of the country's heritage was destroyed, but the revolution, it failed and instead led to reforms which helped usher in capitalist ideals. A few decades later,
when I first moved to China, there was a huge difference. People selling shit out of the back of their trunk. these underground scenes that were, 10 years ago, all have become a lot more mainstream nowadays. It's 100% because of the internet.
现在几乎每个人都有微博、微信，然后上面有很多公众号都会发送滑板的一些消息。
So during that period, everybody got on the net. And it's as if you had 100 years of culture just dumped on you.
2008, the whole indie scene just exploded.
Stuff that you'd only heard whispers about suddenly was freely available.
So now you have a cultural revolution of a different type, but it's still China, and it's always watching. So along with its firewall, these millennial conversations are now all being monitored by the government on Chinese social media apps.
Right here, China, you can call, we have our own internet. We have Facebook. Nope, we don't have Facebook, but we still have Xiaonei. You have like Instagram or something, we have Weixin. The same thing right here.
Sounds okay, but watch what happens when we brought up words like freedom in our conversations about chat applications.
Do you believe in freedom of expression, freedom
I think,
speech?
listen, brother.
Basic freedom.
I think freedom is something that you had to follow the rules. No limit freedom is not freedom.
We have a freedom of speech. Just you have to follow the rules in China, Yeah, there's some subtle rules in China, but if you follow it, respect it, you still have the freedom to express yourself.
Outside of filtering and monitoring internet use, the Communist Party is now getting into the content game too. A few Karl Marx-related video programs have recently popped up, all created by propaganda officials. Socialism is hip, and Marx got it right, combine cool graphics, a studio audience, and lessons about socialism. The aim seems to be to extend Marxism lessons, which are already mandatory in Chinese schools, into the home, and even onto mobile phones. But the most unusual program might be a government-approved hip-hop show on the Chinese equivalent of Netflix.
我自己的预测，只能3个都是pass。如果说去年没有这个节目之前，很多人对说唱的看法哈，就是叛逆，就 hip hop 文化嘛。就因为在过去的 old school 穿的衣服就比较大宽一些，他们就觉得有一些痞里痞气的那种，就感觉有点不正经，像那种小孩叛逆去玩的那种感觉。
The program follows a talent show format and garnered 2.7 billion views in its first season. But after season 1 and around the time the government started paying attention, competitors with racier lyrics vanished from the show, and their online clips were deleted. Media analysts now cite the rap of China as an example of the country trying to control the Western influence pouring in.
好久不见你，打招呼说话特好听，说遇到了些经济困难，真是伤透脑筋。
没有那么极端，不是说一影响他了我就忘掉我自己了，也不是说我就那么守旧，我永远就坚持我自己，就不去学那样的东西。我觉得可以综合一下。我觉得。
Soon Bai now teaches hip-hop lessons. He's a former businessman and made it to one of the top positions on the rap of China. Soon sometimes spits rhymes about communism, but he says the government doesn't pay him to do it.
多想我就把它写了，就弘扬赞颂一下中国。关注时政、了解时政的人，他会发现我里面的歌词其实都是19大报告的精髓。富强、民主、文明、和谐、自由、平等，那些就是社会主义核心价值观的东西。我觉得每天我们都会看见，但不一定有人会记住，不一定有人会懂。那么我觉得，我用说唱把它 rap 出来，把它弄得朗朗上口的，看一下会不会对喜欢时政的、不了解时政的人有帮助啊的。
In a way, Chinese youth are now moving in cultural tandem with those in democratic, developed nations around the world, while the Communist Party uses filtering, monitoring, and propaganda to keep everyone in line. But there's others using the internet in subtle ways to hit back against repression.
Because of the WeChat, the Weibo, I can find 1,000 volunteers within a month by the internet. But without the internet, I cannot find so many gay, lesbian friends or allies because they are invisible.
It's not illegal to be gay in China. The government just doesn't recognize the community. And there's no LGBTQ-related media out there. Leslie claims it's because the government would never allow queer media to air. But check it out. Here's how people are hacking this restriction. There's a web portal called the Queer as Folk Forum. It's named after that early 2000s US TV show that you may or may not remember. Either way, through that forum, volunteers add Chinese subtitles to popular Western LGBTQ sitcoms and movies. And then that's all reposted online.
It feels like Chinese LGBTQ community is invisible in China because government say nothing about that. That is a problem because we don't have the clear statement from the government.
And that's pretty much par for the course. Clarity seems to be a tough thing to come by in modern China. For example, that portrait you saw earlier of communist revolutionary Mao Zedong, it looks out onto a road that cuts through Tiananmen Square. And on that road in 2018, you'll likely spot a few young Chinese entrepreneurs driving Lamborghinis and Ferraris. This is all to say, some argue the ideologies of the Communist Party sit at odds with economic growth and the influences coming into the nation. But Sun Baiyi disagrees.
就像我喜欢了西方的文化，就像我是一个 rapper， 但我也中国的我也没有流失掉。就比如说传统的节日，还有一些中国的习俗，我还是在做的，就以及我的家庭都在做，甚至以后我教育未来的小孩子也会这样去做。我们可以去学他们的东西，他们也可以学习咱们的东西，取其精华，去其糟粕嘛，我是这样想的。